This is another little car we have. This is a 1980 Mercury Capri. Now, it's identical to the Mustang except it's got a domed hood. The reason I'm showing you this car is this is something somebody tried before. Back in 1979, there's a company called Holland Moody in Charlotte, North Carolina. They were involved in building race cars for NASCAR and that sort of thing. They've been in business for years and years. And they put together some of their engineers and worked out and built a car that would get like 60 miles a gallon of battery, and it was all over newspapers across America, and all of a sudden it just all dried up and died, never heard a thing about it. Now, apparently the employees of the company were given a year's severance pay and told that the city of Charlotte had condemned the property the plant was on, and they would lose their jobs temporarily. They had to build a new plant to build the cars anyhow. In the meantime, the story I've been told, and it must be true, is the oil companies bought them out. They weren't going to let this car hit the highways. Either the oil companies, oil industry, or Saudis, one or the other. This little car right here, even though it's over 30 years old now, it cranks and runs like a brand new one. Now, we don't have the regular, they got the low sulfur fuel now that don't get quite as good a mileage as it did back then. They said back then it was getting about 60, now it's getting 50, a little better. Now, this car right here is a 4-cylinder Avco engine. This is an engine that Alice Chalmers sold. It was made in Italy. It's a VM Avco engine, AVCO Avco engine. And it's also, we got a little diverter valve here. You can run this thing on corn oil. You can run on transmission fluid, hydraulic fluid, kerosene, just about anything that's liquid and flammable for running this car. I took reporters ride in it for the local affiliates for NBC and an affiliate out of Columbus, Georgia for ABC. And they told us these newsreels for these things will be forwarded on to the New York offices. And we were anticipating to be on 2020 or Dateline. We never saw a thing. I believe that, I just believe personally, I believe the oil companies found out about it and put brakes on it. At the time this was going on, the oil companies had increased their budget. I was told by a man named Deep Throat that used to work for oil companies, and he had warned them it was about to melt down the whole country in 07. And he pleaded with them. Apparently, instead of listening to him, they fired him. He was calling me and telling me what was going on. He said that they'd increased their budgets with the networks by about 10 times what they normally paid, the oil industry did. That's how they was buying the press through advertising. Now, every dollar a congressman and your senator takes, every dollar they take costs me and you millions. The worst thing, it's going to cost us our children and grandchildren's future. They may not be in America in the future. Where are they going to live? We have got to stop this PAC money. I'm telling you, we're more danger from our Congress getting this PAC money than we are the North Koreans and the Chinese and the terrorists and the Iranians, the whole bit put together. Bird flu and all these other pandemics. The American people, the future of America is in bigger danger from the PAC money. But these cars run fine, they do well. I bought this car from a man named Cagle, one of the nicest men I ever met up in Charlotte, North Carolina. He helped me find this car, and I could tell, you could talk, this man was talking about it, he had such a big ton of pride in his heart talking about this car. He's so excited. And on the phone I talked with one of the guys that helped build the car, and this was just proof of the pudding. Now, we were building the pickups at the time, but I wanted to see one of these cars and see how it runs. So we bought this car in Charlotte and brought it back home. And this car right here, it just absolutely proves to me that this can be done. So they built this car very similar. It's a very similar way they built this car, the way we built our pickups. This car right here runs just as smooth as any car on the road. It'll spool the tires taken off if you double clutch it. It runs over 100 miles an hour top end. In traffic, this is a 95 horsepower cylinder turbo diesel. It's got the passing speed of most mid-sized cars with a small V8 and a 4-barrel carburetor. This thing here will get 50 miles a gallon all day long. Now, before we had to use this low sulfur diesel, I believe it would get 60 miles a gallon. I don't think it'd be any problem. But imagine if the automobile manufacturers in America or Holland Moody stayed in business, if it hadn't been bought out, whether it was the Saudis or oil industry or oil people that bought them out, if these cars had been on the road, we would have never had to import any oil. And that's the thing, that oil companies want to import oil. Back when this meltdown was going on last summer, I was talking to a man that worked at Texas World Music. He was on 30 stations in 7 states, and he told me that 3/4 of oil wells in Oklahoma and Texas and Louisiana were not pumping. He said what they want to do is make it like a shortage. They want to import just as much oil as possible, have to try to drive the price up. And that's what it was. You're not in, the oil companies aren't in the oil business in the oil shortage business. This right here is a fine little automobile. If the American people had been given an opportunity to drive vehicles like this, we wouldn't need to buy any, we wouldn't need to import any foreign oil. That endangers our military, endangers our future, endangers our safety. And yet these vehicles right here, you couldn't ask for better running vehicles than these right here. Our pickup trucks would work for the farmers and working people. These automobiles right here, when you build them, these same engines would work in intermediate-sized cars. You go back. We have to go back now that Chevrolet and Chrysler's going bankrupt. We may have to go back and take older vehicles, like from the 70s in particular, and 80s, and take these real drive vehicles. And we put industrial diesel motors in them. Now you can buy them new. You can buy new Kubota engines, for instance, and you can get clutch and bell housing kits in one place, and another place has got the adapters to fit them to automatic transmissions. You can put them in there, and you can have air, you can have power steering, you can have power brakes. If mounted Fiat's got control of Chrysler, I can only imagine what they'll do. You'll be riding around something about the size of a 55-gallon trash can with wheels on it. These cars are bigger and safer, and you can go to the intermediate-sized cars too. But you know, if you have to, we may have to in the future just actually build our cars. But if the alternative is that we just have to put something together for ourselves, maybe that's what we have to do. It's the American spirit, the American people, pioneer spirit of the people. Anytime something goes through, most people nowadays turn to the politicians for answers. Well, the politicians aren't the answer, they're the cause. It's the politicians taking the payoff money from the oil companies and the other big giant corporations. Think about NAFTA. Do you know anybody that's on NAFTA? Giant corporations on NAFTA. NAFTA was used to wipe out thousands of small businesses across America, and many small towns across America have lost what little employment they had to turn into tumbleweed towns. All this was because of greed of a few corporations, and I'm not down on all corporations. Most corporations are good. They provide goods and services, provide employment for our people and job opportunities, and they pay taxes, and they're good neighbors. There's just a handful of them that's got too big, and oil companies are typical of this sort of thing. We have got to stop the PAC money going to senators and congressmen. Every dollar they take costs us $1 million. It may cost us more than that. It may cost us our nation. And as long as they get this big fat money, they couldn't care less. The American people's got to rise up, and we got to say no. We've got to cut out the PAC money. Every dollar they get cuts our throat. We got to stand up and tell these politicians we want to do what we want to do. One thing I'd suggest, we cut these salaries down for these senators and congressmen and governors and all these people across America to $100,000. If you don't pay them $100,000, you're going to get farmers, you're going to get school teachers, you get librarians, you get mechanics, you get welders, you get salesmen, you get people a better, I believe, a more idealistic breed of people that's everyday working folks. That's what we need to have in Congress representatives. We're sending a bunch of gold digger billionaires up there, or multi-millionaires, they get to be billionaires later, I guess, and to represent us. These people can't live on $100,000 a year, they can't live on $200,000 a year, they got to have about $1 million a year or more, and they take it in PAC money. And if we had just everyday people running our government, we'd be a lot better off. We'd have much, these people have much, they got more consideration for everyday people. But until this is done, I don't know what we're going to do.